Welcome back. If you haven't noticed my window, I changed my curtains. Again, this is done on the same day for the last 3 videos that you've seen. Today's video is going to be 25 bizarre last statements from death row inmates. This may be a 2-part video depending on how long this takes. The first one is John Wayne Gacy. Let's see. Have you ever imagined what your last words would be as you faced death? These death row inmates surely did, and well, let's just say some of these are a bit odd. The first one is John Wayne Gacy. His words were as follows: "Kiss my ass." Nice, right? John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown, was a serial killer and rapist who sexually assaulted and murdered at least 33 teenage boys and young men between 1972 and 1978 in Cook County, Illinois. In 1980, he was sentenced to death, but remained incarcerated on death row for 14 years. On the morning of May 9th, 1994, Gacy had a private picnic on the prison grounds with his family for his last meal, which included Kentucky Fried Chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke, before he was executed via lethal injection. Yeah. The next one is Thomas Grasso. His last words were as follows: "I did not get my SpaghettiOs, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." Fucking shit. Thomas Grasso was sentenced to death for 2 murders. Grasso strangled Hilda Johnson, an 87-year-old woman, using her Christmas tree lights, and stole $8 from her purse and $4 in loose change. Her television set, which he sold for $125. 6 months later, he murdered Leslie Holtz, an 81-year-old man from Staten Island, on July 4th, 1991, stealing his Social Security check. He was executed on March 20, 1995, by lethal injection. I don't know why I'm telling you how they died, but, it's fun. Number 3. H. Holmes, "Take your time, old man." That was his last words. H. Holmes is widely considered America's first serial killer. In Chicago, at the time of the 1893 World Champion Columbian Exposition, Holmes opened a hotel which he had designed and built for himself, specifically with murder in mind, and which was the location of many of his murders, while he confessed to 20 murders confirmed. Anyway, which 9 were confirmed. His actual body count could be up to 200. Yeah. What the hell did he do with his time that he could rack up 200 fucking dead bodies? Number 4. Ted Bundy. Yeah, he's pretty popular for anyone who knows and cares. His last words were, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Ted Bundy was a serial killer, kidnapper, racist, and necrophilia who assaulted and murdered numerous young women and girls during the 1970s and possibly earlier. Shortly before his execution, after more than a decade of denials, he confessed to 30 homicides committed in 7 states between 1974 and 1978. The true victim count remains unknown and could be much higher. He died in electric chair in 1989. Number 5. Jimmy Glass. I don't know who this is, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to find out. His last words were, "I'd rather be fishing." Jimmy Glass was executed for murder in Newton Brown of Newton Brown and his wife, Earlene Neely Brown, at their home in Dixie Inn outside Minden. Glass made headlines in 1985 as a petitioner in a Supreme Court case. He argued that executions by electrocution violate the 8th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution as cruel and unusual punishment, but by the court but the court, by majority 5-4, found that electrocution as authorized method of executions is constitutional. He was electrocuted on June 12th, 1987. Number 6, Jeffrey Dahmer. His last words were as follows: "I don't care if I live or die, go ahead and kill me." Yeah, he sounds so nice, doesn't he? Doesn't say anything about him, so we're just going to move on. Number 7. Well, gentlemen, you are about to see a baked apple. I don't know what the fuck that means, but whatever. George Apel was convicted of first-degree murder for killing a police officer in New York City in 1928. The court sentenced him to death by electric chair. While being strapped to the fatal device, he laughed at the officers. Number 8, Alien Withros. I can't say that. Her last words were as follows, and this is practically a fucking paragraph. "I'd like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back." Eileen was a serial killer who killed 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. She claimed that her victims had either raped or attempted to rape her while she was working as a prostitute, and that all of the homicides were committed in self-defense. She was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. Number 9, Jonathan Green. His last words were, and this is actually kind of sad because I'm not entirely sure if this was true or not, "My left arm is killing me. It hurts bad." Jonathan Green was condemned for the abduction, rape, and strangling of Christina Neal, whose body was found at his home in 2000, about a month after she was reported missing. Despite using mental illness as his defense, the court sentenced him to death by lethal injection. He died on October 10th, 2012. Yeah, I don't know what people think nowadays, deciding to fucking kill people. I just don't get it. Number 10, Carl Panzerim. His last words were as follows: "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could hang a dozen men while you're scurrying around." Carl was a serial killer, rapist, arsonist, and burglar. In Jailhouse Confessions and his autobiography, he claimed that he had committed 21 murders, most of which could not be corroborated, and over 1,000 rapes and sodomies. After a series of imprisonments and escapes, he was executed on September 5th, 1930, for the murder of a prison employee at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. In other words, he was so dumb he committed murder inside a prison. Number 11, Peter Curtin. His last words were as follows: "Tell me, after my head has been chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be a pleasure to end all pleasures." Peter Curtin was a German serial killer known as both the Vampire of Dusseldorf and the Dusseldorf Monster, who committed a series of murders and sexual assaults between February and November 1929 in the city of Dusseldorf, Germany. He is one of the few who believed himself to be a vampire because he drank the blood of a killed swan. Yeah, I don't know where he got that from. Curtin also attempted to drink the blood of his victims. Curtin was executed on 2 July 1931 by guillotine in Cologne, Germany. I just don't get it. Number 12, James Jackson. "I'm ready to roll. Time to get this party started." And that's all he did. Like, they didn't tell what he did or anything. Number 13, Kimberly McCarthy. "This is not a loss. This is a win. You know where I am going. I'm going home to be with Jesus. Keep the faith. I love y'all. Thank you, Chaplain." She was convicted and sentenced to death for the 1997 murder of her neighbor, 71-year-old retired college professor Booth in her Lancaster, Texas home during a robbery. She was also a suspect in the murder of 2 other elderly Texas women, for which she was never tried. After her final federal appeal was denied in July 2012, her execution date was set for January 29, 2013. In other words, she prolonged her life. Number 14, Jose Villegas. It does kind of burn. Goodbye. Jose Villegas was convicted of fatally stabbing his ex-girlfriend, her young son, and her mother 13 years ago at a home in Corpus Christi. His lawyers filed a last-day appeal asking the Supreme Court to stop his punishment, saying testing in February showed he had an IQ of 59. The Supreme Court has prohibited execution of mentally impaired people, and studies consider a 70 IQ a threshold for impairment. The High Court denied it several hours later. Number 15. Clarence Ray Allen. My last words will be, hookah hey, it's a good day to die. That's weird. I don't know why people would say that. Clarence Ray Allen was executed by lethal injection at San Quentin State Prison in California for the murders of 3 people. At age 76 in 2006, he became the second oldest inmate to be executed in the United States since 1976. He was already serving a life sentence for 1 murder when he was convicted of organizing the killing of 3 more people, thus causing pro-death activists to push for his execution. I still don't get it. Number 16. George Harris. His last words were, somebody needs to kill my trial attorney. George Bernard Harris was sentenced to death for shooting a man in the face after winning money playing craps. Harris sought to buy 2 machine guns. He gave them to a friend for safekeeping, who ended up hiding the guns when his friend wouldn't give them back. Harris shot him with a .41 revolver. 2 weeks later, he was arrested for armed robbery. Number 17. Wesley Allen Dodd. I was once asked by somebody, I don't remember who, if there was any way sex offenders could be stopped. I said no. I was wrong. Wesley Allen Dodd was a serial killer and a child molester, and has been called one of the most evil killers in history. Dodd was sentenced to death in 1990 for stabbing Cole and his brother William near a Vancouver, Washington park in 1989, as well as for the separate rape and murder of Lee Illisley, aged 4. Who in their fucking right mind kills a child? Whatever. The sentence of execution was for the murder and not the molestation, which carried a lesser penalty. His execution on January 5th, 1993 was the first legal hanging since 1965. Fucking idiot. Number 18. Jeffrey Matthews. I think that governor's phone is broke. He hasn't called yet. Jeffrey David Matthews, an Oklahoma death row inmate whose execution was postponed 3 times, was eventually executed in 2011 for the 1994 murder of his 77-year-old great-uncle. Matthews was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Otis Earl Short, who was shot during a robbery at his home. After 2 hours, Matthews left the house with $500 in cash and a .32 caliber pistol, and apparently tried to get out of it. Number 19. G.W. Green. Lock and load, let's do it, man. G.W. Green was one of the 3 gunmen who broke into a house and terrorized a family before killing the father. Green was put to death 7 hours after the United States Supreme Court refused, on a vote of 7-2, to grant him a stay based on his argument of ineffective assistance of counsel. I don't see how that would get you out of the death penalty, but whatever. Number 20. Edward Ellis. I just want everyone to know that the prosecutor and Bill Scott are sorry sons of bitches. Edward Ellis was executed by injection at the state prison for strangling an elderly woman at a Houston apartment complex, where he had been dismissed as a maintenance worker. The victim of the slaying was Bertie Elizabeth Akins, 74, who was found strangled in her bathtub at a complex where Mr. Ellis had earlier been discharged on suspicion of stealing from apartments. The motive of murder was robbery, the authorities said. I just don't get it. I don't understand why people would be that stupid, but hey, whatever. Alright, so number 21, Robert Charles Coomer. Go Raiders! Robert Coomer was convicted and sentenced to death by a lethal injection by the state of Arizona in 1988 for the murder of his neighbors Larry Pritchard and Tracy Andrews in 1987. In 2000, Coomer waived his right to appeal, but through various legal delays and disputes in the court systems, the appeals were not stopped until early 2007. 7 years later, after that, it was not long until the death sentence was carried out. 22, Gary Gilmore. Let's do it. Gary Gilmore, criminal who gained international notoriety for demanding the implementation of his death sentence for 2 murders he committed in Utah, after the U.S. Supreme Court upheld a new series of death penalty statutes in the 1976 decision, Gregg versus Georgia. He became the first person in almost 10 years to be executed in the United States. He was executed by firing squad in 1977. Number 23, Robert Alton Harris. You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everyone dances with the Grim Reaper. Robert Alton Harris was a murderer who was sentenced to death in connection with the 1978 murders of 2 teenage boys in San Diego. After a series of appeals and stays of execution, Harris was executed in San Quentin's gas chamber on April 21st, 1992. James French. How's this for a headline? French fries. James French was the last person executed under Oklahoma's death penalty laws prior to Furman versus Georgia, which suspended capital punishment in America from 1972 until 1976. He is also the only prisoner executed in the United States that year. Prior to his execution, French was in prison for life for killing a motorist who had picked him up from hitchhiking in 1958. French pondered suicide, but then decided to murder his cellmate to compel the state to execute him. So in other words, assisted suicide. Basically, that's what I caught out of that. Don't know if that's really right, though. Who knows? Really? Apparently it's not working. Okay, that is basically it for this video. Hope you enjoyed the last words and whatever. Again, this video and the video before this one, which is going to be something else, you'll see what it is, I'm sure, is in remembrance of my father figure who passed away at the beginning of this year. She had a thing for gangsters and stuff like this, morbid stuff basically. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Blessed be.